All right, let's dive into a really powerful monologue that's been making the rounds. It delivers a pretty stark warning about the times we're living in. The speaker feels like he has to share something that he believes is more than just his own analysis. And so we're going to unpack his argument step by step. So he kicks the whole thing off with this one single kind of haunting image. The idea here is that all across the globe, people from different faiths, different cultures, are all looking at the exact same world events, the same storm, but they're interpreting it from their own unique perspectives, from their own towers. And what they're seeing is, well, it's deeply unsettling. And that really brings us to his first big idea, the sense of a shared global anxiety. His whole premise is that with all the chaos we see on the news, people are almost instinctively reaching for ancient stories, for holy books, just trying to make sense of it all. What he does next is pretty fascinating. He starts drawing these parallels across major religions. He points out that some Christians are seeing potential signs of the end times in things like widespread apostasy and calamity. You've got certain Jewish perspectives looking at Israel's restored state and wondering if that's a sign of the Messiah's coming. And then in Shia Islam, the current chaos has some asking if the Mahdi's arrival is near. You see, they're all using different words, but they're asking these remarkably similar ultimate questions. Okay, so from that global anxiety, the argument kind of shifts gears into something a bit more philosophical. The central claim here is that the collapse of a civilization, it's not just about a bad economy or failed politics. No, it starts on the inside, when a society loses its grip on the sacred, on what he calls the permanent. In this slide, it really hammers that point home. He claims that over the last few decades, concepts that used to be the foundational pillars of society have become completely negotiable. Things like marriage, the very nature of truth, justice, even the value of a human life. They're now all treated as these flexible ideas, which, in his view, just erodes the very ground we're all standing on. And the fallout from that erosion is huge. His point is that when those permanent truths are gone, we just get completely consumed by what he calls the intermediate. The constant phone notifications, the political outrage of the day, the endless distractions. We become hypnotized by all the temporary stuff, while the real foundations are shaking right under our feet. So this all leads up to a really provocative question, and it's not just about theology, it's about our modern lives. Are we all just too busy scrolling, too busy building our personal brands, too busy chasing comfort, that we wouldn't even see a major crisis if one were actually unfolding right in front of us? All right about here, the monologue takes a turn. To try and build some credibility for the warning he's about to give, he starts laying out what he sees as his track record of past insights. So we go through this list, right? He talks about warning of a major terrorist attack on New York City way back in 1999, of a fragile financial system before the 2008 crash, and years ago of these strange ideological alliances and AI's threat to our very concept of truth. Now, and this is super important, alongside this timeline, he's the first to admit that he also gets things wrong, sometimes completely wrong, because he tries to fill in the gaps with his own, fallible human conclusions. And this right here, this is probably one of the most important distinctions he makes in the whole piece. He separates his regular analysis, which he says he holds loosely and fully expects people to challenge him on, from a totally different kind of warning. This other kind, he claims, arrives fully formed, with a weight and a clarity that just feels different. And he puts his current message firmly in that second category. So let's see how this all comes together to form the absolute core of his message. The warning isn't about some specific events or a date on a calendar. Instead, it's about this disorienting force he calls the spirit of confusion. To explain what he means, he uses this really powerful biblical analogy. Imagine a thick, disorienting fog just rolls into an army's camp. In the confusion, they can't tell who's a friend and who's a foe, and they just start attacking their own allies. He argues that this exact same kind of fog has fallen over us today, causing us to turn on each other. And he sees this fog everywhere. In politics, where it seems like both the left and the right are just ripping themselves apart from the inside. In society, where we get so lost arguing over personalities while the fundamental systems start to fail. And maybe most tragically, in our own families, where this confusion has us attacking the very people we should be fighting alongside. So, what's the solution? Well, the final part of the monologue pivots, and pivots hard, away from diagnosing the problem and towards a deeply personal prescription. This isn't about politics. It's not about some grand societal plan. And man, this is such a critical pivot in his whole argument. He says it so clearly. Real preparation for whatever's coming isn't about stockpiling supplies or building a bunker. It's about your character. It's about your faith, your daily choices. It's an internal readiness, not an external one. Okay, so what does he actually want people to do? Well, here are the actionable steps he lays out. Pray like heaven is real. Honor your vows. Love your children fiercely. Make peace with your neighbor. And maybe the most important one for our times, step away from the lie that any political movement is going to save you. And really, this quote just sums up his entire point perfectly. He's basically saying that even if he's totally wrong about this big warning, the actions he's calling for are still the right things to do. Living a life of integrity and faith and love, that's the right path no matter what the future holds. In the end, the whole monologue doesn't really leave you with a prediction. It leaves you with a question that's pointed right back at you. It suggests we spend a little less time on the outrage machine and more time asking ourselves this one simple thing. What kind of person am I becoming? And that's the thought he leaves all of us to wrestle with.